In August, the family of 38-year-old Melinda DeValle filed a wrongful death suit against many of the same companies named in the new lawsuit today. Here to talk about where that stands is the DeValle's attorney, Jeffrey Dinner. Welcome. And I know you were part of a joint lawsuit on behalf of the DeValle family. But I'm curious how this will affect you. Will you have to wait for its outcome to see whether you'll be able to move forward with your own suit?
Oh, no. These cases are absolutely independent of each other, but will move along together on parallel tracks. This lawsuit will not slow us up at all.
Will it have an effect one way or the other?
Well, it has to have an effect. First, a very beneficial effect, because now the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Mass Turnpike Authority and the highway people are agreeing with us. They're confirming our perspective that, in fact, very bad stuff was done here, that very negligent, reckless, careless, grossly negligent workmanship, design, supervision, materials that led to the death of Melinda DeValle. So they're essentially confirming what we have said in our complaint and are starting to point fingers.
Now, as I understand it, you, though, have also included the Mass Turnpike Authority.
Yes, we have.
And that's something that Tom Riley is, I asked him about that a minute ago, you were on the road, but he said that as far as he was concerned, they didn't know anything about what was turned over to them in, I guess, January of 2000. So. And
with all due respect, that's probably part of the problem. They should have been far more hands-on. And that's why they're defendants. And at this point, they essentially owned the property and was ultimately responsible for it. And they're going to have to be accountable. Mm-hmm. That other people are also liable, that they are now suing along with other entities, these other people, to establish accountability, to basically collect on some of their own insurance policies when other people are negligent that they're supposed to be supervising. Doesn't change the fact that they made mistakes as well.
Now, this is one of these cases, especially with so many parties, that could really go on for years, if not decades. I mean, the same is true of the state suit filed yesterday. Can you envision a point where you might all want to get together in a room, much the way it happened with Victoria Snellgrove and her family with the city of Boston and that horrible incident at Fenway Park, where you might hammer out something rather than wait to go through the court case?
Well, I think this is a bit more complicated because you just don't have the state or one entity. You've got multinational corporations with thousands of lawyers who are used to litigating large multi-state, multi-district cases. But I would hope that at some point relatively soon we'll start sitting down with people, and in the context of talking about discovery and documents and a lot of the other materials we're seeking now and depositions that we intend to take, that there'll be some productive conversations. Whether the state brokers any of these deals, whether the state's involved, is a very complex calculus at this point and doesn't have an answer.
Mm-hmm. Last week, when Governor Mitt Romney announced that the tunnel system was safe, I was under the impression that the whole thing was reopened. Having just been to the airport this weekend, I can tell you it's not open. I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand the scaffolding. I don't understand what is it. When you hear him now say, and he sort of wants to get it off his plate, he's leaving in January, I mean, do you feel confident about the system?
Well, I don't know where his plate is. I don't actually know where his plate was. What I do know is that there is wide-scale federal and state criminal investigations going on that are, in fact, taking different samples from different parts of the tunnels, particularly from the part of the tunnel, interstate connector, where there was the incident where Melinda DeValle was killed.
That goes for a mile past that, at least.
Well, I think they're taking pieces of the rest of the tunnel as well. There's the issue of repair, there's the issue of capital improvements, and there's also the issue of the criminal investigation that's going on. And I think if you add all those together, you don't have a completely intact tunnel at all.
Mm-hmm. How often do you get a chance to speak to the DeValle family, and how are they responding to all this?
I speak to them very frequently, very, very frequently. We update them all the time on what's going on, try to get a sense of where their lives are. Their lives will never be the same, regardless of how this case turns out. It's not going to bring Melinda DeValle back. Yeah. It's not going to change Angel's life, other than it perhaps will give it some purpose in terms of being able to put together a fitting memorial for his wife. It's not going to bring her back to her children. It's going to establish accountability. It's going to help them acquit some principles. It's going to try to give some overall meaning to this. But ultimately, at the end of the day, she's still going to be crushed to death in an absolutely horrendous way, in a fashion that should not have happened.
Do you think they have an appreciation of the enormity of the reverberations of her death. That, I mean, literally, this whole tunnel system and large other parts of the Big Dig have been put under a microscope. I mean, it should have been done before that, but do they have an appreciation of how big this is at this point?
I think on some level they do, but you know, these are very bright people. They're very caring, sensitive people, but they're also not particularly sophisticated people. So I think the ramifications are fairly clear when you read the papers. So I think they know what's going on. I think what we don't really have a sense of, they may have a sense of the ramifications of the scope of this. I'm not sure we have a real sense of the ramifications in their personal lives and how on a day-to-day, almost hour-to-hour basis, how it basically sucked out all of the air, all of the oxygen of their lives.
The suit that the Attorney General is going to file tomorrow, by his own admission, is lacking in details because he needed to get the suit going now as sort of, as he put it, a placeholder. How specific in the end does he and you have to be about who is exactly responsible for what? Because that is a hell of a lot of discovery.
Well, we have the burden of proof of establishing the facts that will allow us to recover. So I think we have to be pretty specific. However, we've already started our request for documents and our investigations. I would expect at some point we'll have 500,000 documents.
Yeah.
And we'll have a lot of people poring over them. We have many...
Anybody balking on giving you stuff?
Well, it hasn't got to that point yet. I'm sure there'll be battles relative to discovery. There's going to be battles relative to who can be deposed and protective orders at some point. I would also expect that the criminal investigation confuses the issue a bit because a lot of people will not want to be giving open discovery when in fact there may be some criminal liability laying around the corner for them. So under those circumstances it will be a process that will unfold. It will unfold unevenly at different points and will not necessarily be without hurdles and without resistance, but ultimately the story will get told. We will have the information. We will develop a very specific blueprint and picture of what happened, who's responsible. And I would also expect at some point, as this process unfolds, that they're going to start pointing, the different defendants will start pointing fingers at each other.
I'm sure they will. All right. Jeffrey Denner, always a pleasure to have you.
It's my pleasure too.